Welcome back, everyone, to the Sensitivity Doctor. This is Dr. Amelia Kelley, and you are here for the final episode of Season 1. Season 1, for me, was a place where I figured out who I even was in this space. As many of you know, I started this journey with Dr. Jean. She's fantastic. I miss her. But I came into this space thinking of the podcasting world almost from kind of almost like a shallow view, to be honest. I saw it as all these people who just barely know each other sitting down and having these quick conversations and then moving along with their life. And for me, as an HSP, that just didn't really land. Like, it kind of reminded me of how I struggle sometimes with, networking or being in these spaces where we have to put on masks and kind of present the best versions of ourselves. So honestly, if you go back and you watch or you listen to some of the earlier episodes, I wouldn't say I was consciously masking, but I definitely have learned about myself that when it's something brand new, I'll do it. Like, I'll jump in, even if I don't know what I'm doing. I think that's something that is kind of my antidote to perfectionism. Like, instead of trying to do something perfectly, I'll figure it out and mess up as I go. However, the impact on my nervous system while I do that was something I didn't comprehend. Some of the earlier episodes, I would leave the episode after a great conversation and my back would hurt or my head would hurt or I'd be really hungry, even if I wasn't. Like, my body was kind of letting me know you're not relaxed enough. And for many of us out there, we don't even sometimes realize, in my opinion, that these signals are our body's way of providing us proof, honestly, that that's what we're doing, that we're not being genuine. So it's funny. I remember about halfway through the season, as I'm talking to people, it was kind of like there was this turn after my TED Talk, honestly, because the stress and the pressure of trying to memorize, that was something I learned. I love this work, but memorization, not my favorite. As I got all of those TED Talkers on and we had all had this shared experience, I started to realize that, like, I really needed to find a shared experience with the people coming, even if I'd never met them. So instead of kind of looking at, what's someone credentials, what are they promoting, I started to read about the people who were coming on almost as if I was going to hang out with them, or not that they were going to be clients, but just kind of someone that I wanted to get to know on a deeper level. That was when it started to feel more natural for me. Honestly, I let go of some of the questions. I, had some as guardrails because it always feels helpful to do that. But I just learned that I just have to be real with the people that show up so that they'll be real with me. And there were some hard moments too. There was conversations that, went in the old angle where people would come and they wanted to stay kind of surface and be promoting. And I literally had a couple conversations that I stopped mid-interview, and you didn't hear this. And I would just get real with them and say, that's kind of not what we're here for. I want people to get to know how you really feel about this, really like dig into the passion. And it's so important to me that each of you walk away from every episode with at least something actionable that you can do. So that was tough. There was also an episode that none of you saw, honestly, besides my husband, where I had interviewed someone that I was actually kind of angry at the publicist when I think back on this. And I reached out to them and I said, you really should research the hosts more before you try to network and get them on get your person on their podcast. This person came in and we were going to talk about attachment. We had all these like kind of higher level things I thought we were going to go to. And it turned into him telling me the story of his essentially bi-directional abuse. And really what it came down to was his physical abuse towards his partner. And I really appreciate the work and the support of my producer, Camille. Shout out, you're the best. No one sees her behind the scenes, but she is amazing and challenges me. But we discovered that this person had actually some legal ramifications and some publicity issues because they were trying to justify their behavior and kind of say like it was the other person's fault for triggering them. It was such a tough conversation in the sense that I wanted you guys to see it in a way because I think stood up for survivors and essentially turned into an argument this episode. And I knew it was clickable. I knew it was going to be someone that would like pull viewers in and maybe get some people talking, which kind of is like a big part of having a platform. But I also knew that I didn't want to give him that platform. Like I did not want to allow him to have a space where he could turn anyone's opinion towards his and or even have a space for justifying. So it kind of made me think of there's a method of therapy that I don't do where, and I really respect therapists that can do this. It's honestly so outside my wheelhouse. And I will admit when something's outside my wheelhouse, it's so outside my wheelhouse that I don't do it. But it's a form of repair therapy with couples where and look, okay, this is me unmasking. I'm sitting here thinking you guys can see my printer. Before I'd be all freaked out and like moving, but whatever, I'm in an office. So that being said, it's this form of therapy where you basically create a space for an abusive person. Actually, I want to look this up. You know what? It's crazy, you guys. I'm looking it up and I can't even find the name of the therapy. If any of you clinicians out there know the name of this type of therapy, let me know. But basically, it's a form of repair or mediation. I don't do that because I support survivors often. And I think it's just because of my leaning towards empowerment. And I just knew it wasn't the right move. So that's one thing I had to do during this season is like kind of start setting boundaries with my guests. Who's the right fit, who's not. Just because someone, might be clickable, do they send the right message? Another thing, when I talk about unmasking, it's funny, I wish we could almost see a progression. If any of you watch instead of listen, how rigid physically I was in the beginning, and then how now I'm just like my neurodiverse self and I'm moving, I'm shaking. Sometimes I'm looking at the guest and I'm thinking, gosh, I should, stop crossing and uncrossing and drinking my water and doing all the things. But you know what? It's me. And it's what I encourage my group members to do in my ADHD group. It's what I encourage my clients to do. So why wouldn't I do it here in the space that has also served as an interesting bridge? So that's the other thing I really learned from this season is I have serious boundaries when I'm a therapist. Like in the therapy space, I share things about myself. Like I'm not one of those therapists who, if you ask them, where are you going to eat tonight? And then the therapist says, why do you want to know that? Like I hope not many people are like that anymore. I guess there's a time and a place in a certain situation, but I am very relational. However, I'm very guarded with certain things. And that has been interesting. Like transitioning into this space where I know some of my clients listen. I know people I've never met before are listening, and there's stories that I've started to tell about my family that I would not have said in the therapy space. And so it's this bridge of like, how do we as healers and clinicians find that rhythm of sharing in a way that increases our humanity, but also continues to create the boundaries we need in order to do the sharing and the healing. Because one thing I know about myself as a therapist is that I don't burn out as much and I'm able to continue doing the work because back when I was in grad school, I had an amazing professor, shout out Danny Franco, I love you, who had said like, you cannot be omnipotent as a healer and a therapist. You have to set a boundary, not to take credit for the wins, but also not the losses. And that has been really important for me because it allows me not to get frustrated if a client is not going out and doing the thing that I just so deeply know would bring them healing. But in this space, I can have a little bit more of that barrier down and that kind of back and forth. Well, what you're saying makes me feel this way kind of energy. Not that I don't do that at all in therapy, but so it's been interesting. Like I remember the episode with Tila on birth trauma. And I got really emotional during that episode talking about my birth trauma. Or the episode with Dr. Nicole Kane. Like, honestly, I'm so glad I paused before running out and reaching out to her and asking her to be my therapist because we've continued our relationship as peers and we need that. We both have similar missions. But gosh, I felt so supported and seen by her. I remember doing the havening exercise, which I think you can easily find in my shorts if you don't remember how to do it, like just that beautiful self-soothing neuroceptive exercise. I started feeling like I was receiving healing from some of these guests, and that was not something I expected because I've always been so like, let's bring it to everyone else. Let me write for other people. Let me do this stuff for other people. And when I started to feel like that internal shift and talking about my own stuff, I was thinking, oh, this wasn't what I planned. This wasn't what we were here for. But, when you just let things happen organically, I think they happen as they're meant to happen. And so that's really where I'm going with season 2. I hadn't even thought about the concept of seasons until the lovely Camille, who is the producer, had reached out and talked about sometimes in podcasting, you need like a seismic shift. You need a moment to breathe and sit back and get creative and think about what am I here for? And so that's what we're doing. We're going to be coming back mid-May, just in time for, summer break coming, with a new look, a new energy, a refocus. I think initially the focus was meant to be on high sensitivity, and because of my ADHD tendencies, we just were going all over the place with themes. And not that we won't still do that because it's interesting and I am interested in a lot, but I noticed I got a little hesitant to bring up sensitivity with certain people because certain guests were not interested in talking about it, or they even got defensive sometimes. Or I'm telling you, you guys, there were episodes where the person in front of me was clearly highly sensitive, yet they were not connected to it and didn't want to explore it. So I'm going to push the envelope a little bit in this next season and challenge my guests. Check in with them ahead of time if they are an HSP. See if anyone in their life may be instead. But also explore why I was a little bit hesitant, and maybe that's reflective of how we as a world still see sensitivity. Like we still see it as something that we need to be, quote, sensitive about. But that's not my mission. That's not how I truly feel about sensitivity. I truly feel, when I say it's a superpower, it sounds so trite and overspoken, but I don't want to know what it feels like to live without the sensitivity I have. I don't ever want to know what it feels like to listen to a song and not be moved, or to feel so hard in love that nothing else is in existence in that moment, or to be able to grieve so deeply that when your grief passes, you feel it passing. That's something that I remember talking to Rebecca Feingloss about her grief process, and how like we really need to be talking about our grief more realistically. I think HSPs and sensitive souls and sensitive people are the ones who can do that. I remember when I lost my grandmother, who was like my idol, I grieved so hard. For like 3 or 4 weeks, I remember. And then I felt a visceral shift the first time I laughed after, like real laugh, at a campfire with my dad, like a month later. And it was kind of like, oh, okay, this chapter is starting to close. Not that I don't get sad about her anymore, not that grief doesn't come in waves, but I think if I wasn't highly sensitive, I wouldn't have had the capacity to grieve at the depth that I did so I could move forward. And I think there's something there to explore when it comes to things like breakups and friend breakups and all of that. So I want to explore with people and my guests in the next season what that intensity can bring to us. I've got some really exciting guests straight out of the gate. The first couple episodes I can think of, we're going to be talking about the upside of obsessive compulsive disorder and how high sensitivity is actually part of obsessive compulsive disorder. I'd never really heard of it this way. I've got an amazing expert on emotion dysregulation with ADHD and the intensity of that. So I hope that you all stay along for the ride and share the sensitivity doctor. I want to create a community here where we all can continue growing and challenging each other to unmask. And I say this honestly, I get your emails. I get the stories you share, and I am going to be shaping episodes based on those stories. The episode specifically that I'm going to be filming soon, I'm going to be sharing and exploring some strong emotions that a listener had reached out to me about his high sensitivity as a man, and how that impacts him and how it makes him a little bit non-traditional in the way he wants to be in a relationship. So just these really interesting stories are going to be what you're going to be hearing. So if all of this sounds exciting to you, please join me back for season 2, where we're going to explore sensitivity and its intensities in all its forms. Just remember, as we join together in season 2 and exploring the intensity of high sensitivity and what this can look like, you are not too much. You're just learning how to understand yourself. See you soon, everyone.